this is Dr. Kevin Blau from Blau Family Chiropractic here in Portage, Wisconsin, and we have our super special guest, Madleen Alsabbah from Be Alive Yoga Studio. Correct?
Woohoo!
Yes. All right.
Correct.
And we have her here because I'm sure you've heard a little bit about yoga before. Maybe not, but if you haven't, Madleen will help us kind of understand. Maybe we'll begin with what is yoga a little bit, and maybe a little bit about what you do and your certifications. And then we're going to get into the vagus nerve today. So we're going to talk about this pandemic and the vagus nerve, and we'll talk about how yoga can be an answer to that. So let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my name's Madleen. I moved to Madison about 5 years ago. I met Monique, the owner of Be Alive, through a gym/yoga studio in Madison a few years back, and we connected. And originally I told her I'd help her out with the studio with just graphics, and then it turned into me becoming the manager. Thankfully, I had a calling that this was it, and we were just the universe just brought us together. I was practicing yoga in college with my roommate in our small, tiny apartment. And then I kind of just expanded my practice when I came to Madison and checked out a few studios, and just really fell in love with the community and just the feeling of being around people, practicing mindfulness. And it really just changed me as a person. It changed the way I just looked at the world. It changed the way I reacted. It changed my health. It changed my mental state, all for the better, and just kind of helped me grow a lot mentally and spiritually. I looked at it as a physical practice at first, and as I continued to practice it, I took it way more into a mental and spiritual practice, and here I am now. So,
all right, mind, body, spirit. So if anybody's looking for a change, it sounds like this has changed your life. And so we've had an experience, previous episode, we've kind of gone through yoga a little bit. We went through a little bit of thing, but we're going to dive into this a little bit more, because we're in a time where we call this a pandemic, unprecedented. All these words are coming out as something that's never really happened before. And so we have to understand that we have certain reactions to these things. And I see it in my own practice in chiropractic. I see people tense, tight, unresolved, maybe mental, emotional, spiritual stress that just cannot be unraveled. They don't know how to untie the knots that are getting tied up, whether it's maybe financial stresses that they're having, possibly job stress, everybody's at home stress, children's stress. There's all these things that are happening. And at the end of the day, everybody's kind of in this. It's just how we manage this. There is a physical response that happens. Our bodies are kind of wired in a way to help us out in these situations. And so I call this the gas and the brake. If we want to use real technical terms, we can use the sympathetic system, which is our fight or flight. The bear is in the room. Somebody's after us. We're avoiding something, a danger. And then we have the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest. This is where we're at peace, rest, relaxation. Our body's able to digest foods better when we're in that position. So there's a nerve in our body, interestingly enough, called the vagus nerve. Anybody ever heard of that? It's not out in Vegas, out where we go gambling. It's not out there. It's actually really in our body. And so what it does is it begins really at the base of our neck, in our cervical or neck, in our spine, and goes and feeds into the stomach. So this is why we may have challenges with digestion and things of that sort. So when we have a pandemic like this, we want to move away from it, right? It's confining, it seems dangerous, all these kind of things happen. And Madleen, what do you find happens as a response to that? What is a common response, a fight or flight? What does that look like? We don't probably run from animals anymore too much. We're in a more sedentary society, but what do you see when people come into the studio, or maybe even your own experience, when you get this fight or flight? There's imminent danger. There's some kind of danger, and my body wants to get away, but I can't get away. So what do you see?
Tension, for sure. Tension throughout the whole entire body, throughout the mind, throughout the butt, like just literally tension. And when people it's interesting because from experience myself, I've came into a class very tense and walked out of it just looking like a whole new person from what the owner of the yoga studio has said to me before. And it's just cool to see, yeah, just the difference. You can just feel it too. It's just an energetic thing as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what I see. I just see a lot of like, shoulders are always lifted. Even in class, I always say like, hey, relax your shoulders, relax your face. Is your forehead tense?
Yeah.
And you didn't even realize it until the teacher says something, hey, soften your forehead.
I see that a lot with patients. They'll even be laying down, face down on the table, and they'll be like this. And I go, you can let those down. Just let them down. That's okay. So I don't think people even realize that it's happening. Sometimes the best thing is just ask somebody else. Like it's very interesting. You say you see people coming in a tense situation and they leave relaxed. They've kind of somewhat unraveled these little knots that have manifested physically in their body. So, yoga is a way to physically reduce that, but also, and you're going to be sharing after this, we're going to be leaving a link in the video of you going through stimulating the vagus nerve in a sense, to relax, through using physical means, right? Maybe breathing, getting your mind at rest. I went through part of it and I noticed that just talking your way through that and giving you permission to do certain things. Sometimes you don't know how to let that go. How do you find that works being an instructor? How do you lead people in yoga? Do you lead people? Do you lead yourself? How does that kind of go in a class or maybe even one-on-one setting? How do you do that to set people up?
Well, the best way I lead and what's helped me in classes is through the breath. When the teacher says inhale, get into this pose, exhale, release, inhale. Like most of the time when you're inhaling, you're opening up, and exhaling, closing. So breath is the most important thing. And I say that in the beginning of the link too, is that we want to focus on breath. And like the most immediate way to change the balance of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve is through breathing. And I say in the beginning, we're going to practice through Ujjayi breath, which is inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose.
Yeah.
So when you consciously focus on your breath through the practice, which is the most important part of the practice, it's not the physical pose, it's the breath. You'll notice a huge significant difference in your body and just where your energy is at from when you first started the class to the end of class, or even just the pose itself. Like when you first get into child's pose in the beginning of class versus the second child's pose in the middle of the class. So yeah, breath is pretty much the most important way to lead.
Yeah, and I found when I went through it, I noticed myself wanting to hold my breath. I don't know where we get that holding our breath, and I don't know what we're waiting for. Are we anticipating something? I don't know what that is, but just letting your air out, just bringing it in, letting it out. In, out, in the nose, out the mouth. However this goes, extending the breath. Why do you think people want to just tense up? Well, even during that, you're probably going through, and maybe there's like a downward dog or something. I know I have a problem with that. And I'm in there, I'm trying to do everything and not letting it come to me. So
yeah. Well, it's definitely a practice, and that's why they say yoga is a practice, and it's never something that you're good at, right? Yeah. Over time, when you continue to practice more and more, and you become more and more conscious of your breath, eventually it becomes easier, where you don't even realize that you're doing the pose, and you just realize that you're breathing. Versus now, we look at it because it's something so we're unfamiliar with and we're not used to. It's like holding a very heavy weight, right? Except this weight is your ego that you're facing, and it's tense. It's a lot, so it's almost hard to face when you're in that pose too. And something that's so unfamiliar, you don't even notice where you're at mentally. It's just, or you don't even notice where you're at physically and mentally. It's just more so like the stress that you're experiencing that's what your focus is on. Yeah. And so it's harder to breathe, I'd say, when you first start to practice. But the more and more you practice, and the easiest thing I like to tell people is counting your breath. You know, when you start to notice your mind wandering, try counting your breath. I think counting your breath helps you kind of like if you're forced to focus on it,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
So
So
what do you find, do you find it's better to do any type of stretching, yoga, meditation in a group, on your own, one-on-one? You know, I look at this right now, we're in a new word, social distancing. I never heard that word before until like a month or two ago. You have to stay away from people because of distances of transmitting the virus and such. And I feel like people need people, right?
hmm yeah.
We are made for community, right? In a sense. I mean, obviously we need time alone, but what have you found to be beneficial? I know you guys have a studio, and so you have classes, and obviously more people around. What do you find? Is it just individual, or do you find that you can do this on your own? Is it beneficial to be in classes and see that vagus nerve generally just being activated and creating this parasympathetic, this rest and digest as a class, and it just seems to kind of hum a little bit, you know? So what's been your experience? Because you've taught a little while.
Yeah.
We want to know that.
Well, I think I mean, all ways are beneficial. I think it's really different. It's really hard to say one is better than the other, or I prefer one over the other, because I think it's important not to let yourself be attached to one way of practicing. Like, not to let yourself be attached to just having a one-on-one practice, or just going to the studio, or just doing it on your own at home. I mean, I've played with all three. You know, I've practiced at home through in front of a screen. I practiced in a studio, and I practiced with a teacher one-on-one unintentionally, because it just happened to be me and the teacher in that class. No one else came, and it was awesome. And I think it's just good to experience all three. Like, being in front of a screen allows you to kind of just do your own thing. And in a way, like, it's good for people who have never practiced too. Because I know a lot of times when people first go into their yoga class, they feel like everyone's looking at them, when that's not the case. No one's looking at you. This is your practice, and that's the most important thing that you need to know, is that no one's judging you. You might think that, but it's actually you judging your own self. And then being inside a classroom is also wonderful, just because having that full energy with everyone around you and like breathing together, it's very rewarding. It's like, oh, you're all here for the same thing, to work on yourselves mentally and physically and emotionally. So it's cool to see other people that are on the same boat as you. And then also a one-on-one where you get to learn something new with that teacher, because they're pointing out things that they don't get to point out in class, you know, that they don't really have the time to point out in class, because there's so many other people, and you kind of just have to get through it. You only have a certain time. So I haven't really said, like, there's nothing that's better than the other. I wouldn't say that. I just find benefit in all three, really. So
I just didn't want people to think, well, boy, if I don't go here or don't go there, if I do it by myself, you know, they're good. And maybe this is just through experience. Now with this time we're having right now with this pandemic, and I don't like to stress on it, but I think it's very interesting when you have social distancing and you have this kind of powerless feeling, like I can't do anything, I can't change anything. How do you find engaging in this routine creates power? It's like almost power in constraint. You are gaining it back, but you're not grabbing at it. You know, it's coming to you. I mean, how would you tell people, hey, you know what? Yes, this is kind of a physical thing. It is a mental, emotional, and it is a spiritual thing that happens that gives you power back. You know, power as far as peacefulness and things of that sort, stimulating that vagus nerve, as we said, because this really is a physical thing in our body. We're wired this way, and we just want to find ways to tap into this little guy, because we're even at the end of your class when everybody's standing up straight and smiling and peaceful, the stress is still there, right? So now we can manage it better, right? I mean, that's kind of the end of the day, right? Because for whatever reason, at this moment in time, this is still happening. 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after, it's still there, right? So maybe you could speak to how you gain this power back, or this strength, back and turning this sympathetic response, this stress and shoulders and the ears, to like down, relax. I can rest, I can digest, I can do these things that are they're a little more peaceful, a little more less stressful.
Yeah. Well, I think right now we're kind of forced to try to be present, you know, and that's because we just don't know what's happening. Like, we really don't know. We don't know when we're going to open up. They give us a date, but, you know, they give us a date previously and that changed, right? So we just don't know. And that kind of, in a way, like, it relates to yoga, like, where you just don't know what pose is coming up next, you know, unless it's a sequence practice, but you don't know what pose is coming up next. So you almost have to, if you continuously think about what's coming next, you're going to stress, right? Because again, it's like thinking about the future. And again, coming into the conscious breathing, when you focus on the breath, I was just actually, I did a awareness meditation before this, and he is with Deepak Chopra, and he said, start to notice your breath. And when you just notice, as you noticed your breath, did you notice that your breath got longer? So it's like you're focusing on that breath, right? So you're being present within your breath. And so again, that just has a lot to do with helping the vagal nerve. And when you focus on your breath and you are present, I think that's what really helps us out. And it's all like, in a way, relatable. We just don't know what's happening, so we're forced to be present. So it's all one. Everything is one.
You know, and it's funny because when you say that, it is very interesting. I talk about this a lot with my team. You know, we have core values that we ascribe to. One of the core values is simple, making things simple. We want to complicate things. We want to complicate them because somehow that seems more novel, to be super complicated and have all these things kind of happening on. But sometimes it's a little more profound, maybe even more difficult to be simple. It's so simple that it's difficult for some reason, because we don't normally do it. Breathing, I mean, really, 12 times a minute, kind of on average, that you're doing this. If you get this right, you're restful, relaxed, you digest, you're peaceful. You get this wrong, you start shallow breathing, you start being stressed just because of your breathing. And maybe nothing's even wrong. At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong, but you have this shallow breathing. And my experience with this is very interesting. When I have patients kind of laying on the table and they're just laying there waiting for me to engage a situation, you can see how they're breathing. I look for the breathing as they lay there. I see where they're breathing. You see many people are chest breathers, shallow, rapid, you know, maybe more than 12, maybe more like 15 or whatever, and they might be in pain. And it's very interesting when they're done. As we get done, you can see they're very relaxed. They're breathing with their abdominal area, just like a little baby, right? Babies know how to do it. If you look at babies, they breathe with their abdominal area. They squat down. They don't bend over. So I always kind of wonder, when did we lose that? And so maybe it's when we become aware of other things, not just the present moment, like you said, Madleen. When you're focused on the present moment, there's not a lot really going on. I'm looking at a flower. It's beautiful. And I'm just looking at that and not worried about everything else. That's restful in itself. Just art and music can create a parasympathetic change in our body. It's very interesting. Just humming, it creates a parasympathetic balance in our body. Gargling with water. See, our vagus nerve is in our neck. And so it's kind of interesting, these things that can stimulate that. Just smiling can produce a parasympathetic response. And then obviously maintaining relationships, right? Maintaining solid relationships. You don't need 100 people or 1,000. You just met one or two, and you got some solid relationships. That creates peace for you, right? And rest, and focusing on that present moment, that person right in front of you, or whatever it is kind of interesting. What have you found? Why do people come to yoga? Maybe the top two things when people go, you know, I just keep coming because this is what I get. This is the experience I get from doing yoga in whatever matter, one-on-one, on their own, in a class. if you were to tell people, hey, this is why you would do this. This is the play out. This is what's in it for me or you. Why would people come to the studio? Why would they come to a class? Maybe they don't even know, so you can help them.
Yeah. I'd say to let go. A lot of people come to class, like me personally, like I come to class to let go, like let go, like just to surrender to whatever is. And again, just to be present through my breath. And, I think a lot of times other people that come to yoga, like when they first try it are like, oh, I came here because my doctor said I should try it. Or I came here because I need to focus on my stress. Or a lot of times, again, people come in for the whole like physical part side of it. I need to be more flexible, or I need to gain strength and stuff like that. And then over time, it doesn't turn into that. Over time, it turns into a mental practice. But I go to practice. I just go to practice because it's me checking in with myself, asking myself how I'm doing. And, again, not every practice is going to be perfect. It doesn't matter how long you've been practicing for. I still have days where I'm in a practice and I get so frustrated and I notice that I'm not breathing. And then once I start to breathe, it becomes better. But when I see myself getting frustrated in a practice, I know that there's something going on internally. What is it? And it's crazy because as you continue to practice, it's like answers come to you too. Like whatever you've been thinking about throughout the day, or like something that you couldn't even think about, or you're frustrated about, and you're in class, that answer comes to it. It's like, oh, this is why I reacted this way, or this is why this is happening. Oh, I get it now, without even asking for the answer. It just happens through breath. And what yoga essentially is meditation through movement. It prepares you to sit. Like the physical side of it prepares you to sit for a long period of time. So,
well, we are a mind, body, and spirit, and I equate this a lot to my time in the morning. I call it entering the classroom of silence, where we enter into that classroom. In a classroom, you learn things, right? I hope, and so, like you said, these things come to you. You have the answers. You do. You just have to be quiet enough and in a place where you're in that parasympathetic driven time, where that's where the answers come. I find, and I don't know about other people, I many times find answers when I'm at play. I'm playing, I'm enjoying myself, I'm at rest. It's not when I'm stressed out, busy. That's not a creative time, I don't think. Students are creative and playful, right? And they find that time then. And you probably know, and we're not going to get into that, but yoga has so much research to it as well, of all the benefits of probably lowering stress, blood pressure, increasing flexibility. All those things are kind of nice things to talk about, right? But at the end of the day, this is a journey, right? This is a journey where we continue to practice. Just like anything, we're going to get better at it as we go along. Is it perfect every time? I don't know. You did your routine. I don't know, was your routine perfect that you're going to show us? That you probably could go through there and go, I could have did something different, better. But at the time, that's what you needed, and you did it, right?
Yeah.
And so we're all going to get the benefit. Your experience, I think that was almost 30 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah. And no, it actually was not a perfect video for me because I didn't realize that my camera had a 20-minute timer on it, so I've had to record it multiple times. But
you nailed it. It was good.
Thank you. I hope so. It was a practice. It's learn as I go. I hope that videos that I continue to make will become better and better. But I kind of came up with the sequence beforehand and had it down there. But I mean, of course, we always think that we can do better. But I think once I start to not care and I'm actually in the moment with myself and not really focus on the camera, like I did on my third video, a separate video, it will become a lot easier and better. But yeah, we'll always go back and be like, oh, I wish I would have done this. But again, that's why it's a practice, right?
Yes. Well, we appreciate your time in giving and over delivering. That was wonderful. I enjoyed my time stimulating my vagus nerve, producing a parasympathetic response in my body, which promotes growth, healing, immune system increase, growth and development, all these things, because at the end of the day, and I tell my patients, you can't be in growth and protection at the same time. It's very difficult to be there. So if you're in protection, pretty hard to be in a growth mode. You just can't do both. It's like trying to remodel your house while it's on fire. It just, it doesn't happen. And so we have to understand that if we're in a protection mode, we got to somehow find a way to get over there. And for right now, we just have to have stress relieving techniques. And I think this is a lifestyle that you've adopted, and probably a hobby. And well, it's more than that. I mean, it's a lifestyle. So I'm going to leave a link on here to go to this routine that she's put together. That's to stimulate the parasympathetic or the vagus nerve. And hopefully you enjoy it. Please comment, share, post, whatever people do on these things to spread this far and wide. She really took a lot of time. Don't tell us how many times you did it, but we'll
feedback
appreciate
is great.
This. What's
feedback
that?
Is great. I said feedback is great. I
Yes.
do appreciate feedback.
Yeah, that's good. We want to improve what we're doing, and I hope to have you back, Madleen, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about how to stimulate energy, because we're going to get done with all this at some moment, and then we're going to the gates are going to open, and the world's waiting for us. The answers are coming. We have them. We are now at a time of pause, momentarily, but in the meantime, we're preparing. And to prepare, you need to be at rest and creative. So I appreciate it, Madleen from Be Alive Yoga Studio in Portage, Wisconsin. And this is Dr. Kevin Blau from Blau Family Chiropractic. Thanks for hanging on with us. We will be back. Thank you again, and be well. Thank you.
Be well. Thanks, guys.